Good morning to you. Welcome in to the Union Pennzoil Quick Lube Let's Talk Show. That's what we're going to do. We've got company in the studio this morning. Looking forward to talking to David Tribble. And if you say, who's that? We're going to let you know who that is. And I think you'll be very interested in finding out. All right, back with you. We're on the show. As I say, we have a guest on the show today. And been looking forward to this one since we made contact with David Tribble just last week. Now, let's fade this music down. I tell people the music we use here has no rhyme or reason to it. We just play something and let it go. Oddly enough, as of today, and a news release I received via email this morning, David Tribble has officially announced as a candidate for House District 42. That is the seat that is currently held by Mike Anthony, who will not be going back to that seat because he's running for the Office of State Superintendent of Education. So, with that in mind, David has jumped into the race. And David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you? Glad to be with you.
I am glad to have you with us. These cameras these days just, you got is that an iPad or?
It is.
Oh, okay. And that voice was another David Carter, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And I guess you work with David.
I do.
Okay.
We handle all of his campaign.
Okay, very good. Well, this is one that you're very involved in. This is sort of interesting. Let's jump right into this, David. Your official announcement came out today via the news release, and running for District 42, which includes mostly Union County.
Well, it's certainly the majority of people are in that county, but it has two centers of influence. One would be over in the Clinton area, and the other would be in the Union area. And there are outlying communities in Lawrence County, including Joanna, that are not part of Clinton proper, and there are outlying areas in Union County that are part like Jonesville and Lockhart and Carlisle and that kind of thing that have their own unique way of looking at the world and unique needs and so forth. And so in some ways it's a mixture of rural communities that have really a lot in common, actually, that both areas have been formerly industrial areas that have seen some really rough times in terms of the loss of those manufacturing companies that were here. And that they're both looking at Columbia in the same way, and that's what makes the district appealing to me, is that I've had experience in local government in towns like Union and Clinton.
Yeah, you're former mayor.
Former mayor, and back in the 80s, and spent some time doing that, and got out of elected politics, and thought that would be the end of it for me. And for a number of years, this was back in '86. I finished my second term, and left the city in really good shape, fewer employees, and when I came in, left them with a couple of $1 million in the bank, and was asked to join the hospital board at a very difficult time when both of our hospitals were combining. The Clinton Hospital and the Lawrence Hospital were combining, and there was a lot of angst about all of that. It reminds me a lot of the kinds of situations that you're dealing with here with the local hospital. You know, the Bailey Hospital in Clinton was serving about the same number of people, and so I've seen that movie before, and was part of the management that built the new hospital, and we burned the bonds on that about 2 years ago, so that was over 20 years ago. So
you're saying some things here that's interesting me an awful lot. And we haven't even gotten into the House race yet.
Right.
But having followed the Union Hospital District, as it is known, and the woes that they're going through right now, and this drain of bleeding money, it seems like, going out, and been involved in some of the conversation, not involved, but at least there to listen in some of the conversations they have been having about what are we going to do. And I imagine, I say not even talking about the race, but I do imagine that some of this could spill over into legislative issues. But and this is interesting because one of the things that has been mentioned as a possibility is a partnership with someone. And Lawrence basically did that with Greenville, did they not?
They did.
And the union is sort of looking, I don't know if they've talked to Lawrence. They are not saying too much for obvious reasons. But I guess the question is I'm wanting to ask you right now. Obviously that worked.
It's not over yet. I mean, the full impact of whether it has worked or not is not known. But I suspect that, joining up with a large organization like that, that it will survive. I'm sure that there will be a Lawrence campus to the Greenville hospital system for some time to come. The thing that's sad for the locals is that you lose the CEO and you lose the person that's in charge of building the hospitals and you lose the chief financial officer, and all of those people now don't live in your community anymore, and it's part of what we, the local people, don't feel like that adds to the richness of our community. But the board from Lawrence County is quite able. That they are very able people, and that I wouldn't want to second guess what they felt like they needed to do looking down the road at it. And so, but having the hospital there, it's $50 or $60 million a year that stays in our community that would not have been had we stayed on our own. My assessment of it was that we would have just been a heliport, to some other place. And so that wasn't altogether much fun. One of the things that I noticed about in reading just the news things, looking at your website and reading the news reports on the local hospital is, I don't think the local hospital is just underutilized. They are being utilized by people who don't have the ability to pay.
Exactly.
And that I work with State Farm in Clinton. And that a big part of what I do in the office is the health part of things. And I have to say that one of the reasons I'm running as a Republican is that the Obamacare situation has really messed things up. And it's not just for people who are paying the bill, okay? I mean, the problem with health care, and there were problems with it, is that it cost too much and that too few people were paying for it. And that what has happened now is that, and let's just look at it from the low end. Let's look at it from the bottom up. That if you don't make the 100% of the poverty level, you don't qualify for any subsidy at all. So, for example, for an individual, if they don't make $1,000 a month in their earnings, they don't get any subsidy at all to sign up for it. If they make $1,000 a month, then they can qualify to buy a decent plan for $20 a month. But if they make $480 a month, they don't get any subsidy at all. Okay, and so and the way that Obamacare was designed was for the states to expand Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And that Republican states, 33 of them, have decided that they're not going to do that because they do not trust the federal government to pay them that reimbursement percentage for an indefinite period of time. And so you've got this gap at the bottom end of things that affects places like Clinton and like Union uniquely. I mean, or similarly is what the word I'm trying to get at is that they're in the same boat. Demographically, they're the same community. If you look at it from 30,000 feet, they look like they're the same place. And so the needs are similar. And somehow or another that gap's got to be corrected. And so how you go to a situation where everybody is supposed to have health insurance and you come up with fewer people insured is just disaster. I mean, I just don't know how they could have messed it up any worse. And I'm not just talking about for the people who are paying all the bills. I'm talking about for the people that can't pay the bills at the bottom end of it. And that unlike, let's take the issue of let's take the issue of legalizing marijuana, okay? It's out there and it's contentious, and that it is being decided state by state, and that other states can stand back and see how it works, and that if it ever becomes the law of the land, it will have become the law of the land because people decided to change their mind about it and change the law. This was something that was imposed on the country. Yeah. That it never had the majority. They lost the majority in the House of Representatives as soon as it passed, and they may lose the Senate for the same reason in this election. And so I think there's some very interesting lessons about command and control economies. You know, it's just very difficult for Washington to say that this is what we're going to impose on everybody out there and make it work. I think there's some lessons to that in everything that the Democrat Party puts forward. And I was just telling David Carter, who's traveling with me, that the first characteristic of a Republican is being ornery. You know, it's just not wanting other people to tell them what to do.
I like that. You know, and as I understand the Obamacare thing, for it to work, you had to have people, you had to have the healthy people signing up for insurance and making it work. And as a result, you've got the people that can't afford insurance on that low end that are signing up, which is a drain on that budget.
Well, it is, and that they're not signing up now because the deductibles are $4,000 and $5,000 a year before you get anything out of it. And you're telling somebody who's young and healthy that I want you to pay me $400 or $500, but I'm not going to pay you anything at all unless it's an unmitigated disaster and they think they're bulletproof and are not going to experience those things. But let me contrast that. And you know, during the election, it was very difficult for Romney to deal with ideas like this because you know that he was calling for a universal mandate as well, and that the Republicans sort of drew the line at the universal mandate. But the fact is that you have to have automobile insurance, and it works fairly well. I mean that basically you don't have to pay rates that are so high that you cover yourself and the other guy, and so it lowers rates for everybody. But when Romney did that in Massachusetts, the big key to his I think success there, they think is success, and that they are the state and they can decide what they call success. The big issue there was that he was taking money from the federal government to pay 80% of the bills. Okay, so anytime you can get 80% of the money from somewhere else, it looks a lot better to you. But when the federal government does it, it's all our money, and that's not possible. But what he did was he took the uninsured people and he put them all on a form of Medicaid, got 80% of the money from the federal government, matched it with 20, and they all became insured. He didn't put mandates on everybody to have the same kind of plan. He didn't make the people who were in business supply people with health insurance in any way. He just allowed them to get into this plan. And so never was there a moment where there were fewer people insured than before. Never a moment. And that more people were contributing something to their own care than before. It stabilized the cost of the providers, the doctors and the hospitals, because they didn't have to account for all the people who didn't pay their bills. And so all I'm saying is that if you were going to devise a plan like this, you really couldn't have messed it up worse than they did.
There, headset there.
There is.
Put that on here. I've got that one's sort of a puzzle to try to figure out, I'll admit.
Okay.
There you go. All right, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. How you doing, brother?
Fine, talk to me.
Well, I got a question for the proposed guy taking Mike's place. Going to try to take his place. Like I said, I got a special needs son, and you know him.
Yeah.
And in South Carolina, as far as federal government too, you have no tax incentives for people with special needs, and yet you can go to college and all that stuff and get all these special tax breaks. And was wondering if probably nobody's ever proposed it to him, but what would it take to put a bill in to get a tax break? I mean, like, so we ain't no telling how many thousands of dollars a year we spend for special needs care and all that stuff, and yet we get no tax incentive. And the ones that don't have special needs kids aren't as drained. Now, we're literally financially drained. You know, we got Ryan's Law and all that stuff with insurance and except for Medicaid and all that stuff, but still, you know, it only covers a certain amount of it, but there's a lot of out-of-pocket expense, and it's tough on people like us.
Well, it's interesting that you would bring that question up. And
You want to just hang up and listen, Gator?
Well, I'm in Spartanburg. If I can, I'd like to.
Oh, okay. Just hang on then.
Gator, that's an interesting question. You see, I don't know how much I want to get into the very personal side of this, but in the calendar year of 2012, my wife had a stem cell transplant, and that, you know, that's not any fun, and the whole year wasn't fun, and that we ended up with very substantial medical costs. And that Obamacare has taken the threshold at which you can start to deduct medical expenses of any kind from 7.5% of your adjusted gross income to 10% of your adjusted gross income. And so even if you're got 2 teachers in the family or 2 civil servants and you're in management positions and you have adjusted gross of $100,000 just for easy numbers, before you can start deducting for your medical expenses, it just went from $7,500 to $10,000. And if you think about it, if you made double that, if you were a professional, a dentist or a lawyer or something like that, it's all prorated up anyway. And so that what I'm saying is that Obamacare has even messed that up. But I think and so what you see here with Obamacare is you see the movement of people's medical expenses to taxable money to begin with, because it's not going to be coming through their employer the way that it did before, and they wanted to tax the high-end plans. And so if the first problem with medical care is it costs too much, why are you taxing it? And why do you want to move everything to a taxable situation? Why isn't all of it deductible? And that is to your point, that my thought about it is that it all ought to be deductible. I mean, all of my business expenses are deductible from the first dollar practically. So why wouldn't the special needs that you're talking about be deductible from the first dollar? And I can tell you that last year I would love to have been able to deduct the first 7.5% as opposed to that, and we well exceeded that. So I do understand what you're talking about, and that I would like very much to see that happen. The state usually follows the federal government on the deductibility issues like that, but I'd like to see it deductible from the state standpoint right off the bat. And I think that one of the things that you see in Columbia, having been there for a term already, is that the states are incubators for ideas like that. And a lot of ideas that eventually catch hold across the country do start in the states. And so you see people that have an interest in certain legislation that will come to a state the size of South Carolina and see if they can get a critical mass to get it into legislation and go with it. And that's a great idea, and I'd love to be the sponsor of a bill like that.
I'd love to hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gator. See you, buddy. That's one of our buddies here, and we know him as Gator.
Okay.
Okay. He knows himself that way. I don't know if he got a real name. So, anyway, but no, and being somewhat familiar with his situation, and we're dealing with autism here, just to be honest with you, and there's still a lot of work and research to be done there, and I know it's got to be a strain on him and his family. And we'd love to find a way to maybe to help that a little bit. I think our governor has done an outstanding job in creating jobs in South Carolina. I'm getting almost daily news releases from somewhere in the state from her saying somebody's expanding or somebody's creating an industry somewhere. And also, just last week it came out that for the first time in, gosh, I don't know when, our rate of unemployment fell below the national level. That's a good sign.
It is a good sign, and the governor has been active with that, and that in my experience on city council and mayor of Clinton, we were in the 1980s. A lot of the movement, manufacturing-wise, was moving from the north to the south, and so we, brought in Avery Dennison. It was in some form of packaging, printing, and now does stamps and so forth. We brought in Mueller Valve that was making valves for municipal water systems. We brought in Morris Bean Company that was making impellers out of aluminum for diesel trucks and so forth. Brought in Gold Bond products during that time, and brought in the first distribution center that's our area has become more famous for, with your Belks and the Walmart distribution center there in Lawrence County, which came shortly after I was mayor. So I have had some experience with it, but those dynamics are not at play today. That the dynamics are different. That what was moving south then is moving to China now, and the stuff that is moving in on a large scale. Let's take an example, not just of BMW, which is the poster child for this point, right, but also the ZF transmission plant that's shipping transmissions all over the world that we brought in to Lawrence County. It's nestled up against Greenville. I mean, it's 20 miles away from Clinton, and that's fine. I mean, I'm glad that it's here, and I'm glad that it's in Lawrence County. I'm glad that I was able to participate in that. But we've got to look after the nucleus of our old communities. That would be Union or Clinton and Lawrence itself, and that I don't think that we can wait for somebody to just drop a bomb of goodwill on us and come in and put in a great big plan in downtown Clinton or downtown Union. The biggest success we've had in Clinton was the landing of the Presbyterian School of Pharmacy, and that without getting into to that whole story, which is really quite interesting, the Presbyterian College School of Pharmacy could have been anywhere. I mean, it could have been in Greenville in a skinny minute. The current president of Presbyterian College was the dean of the business school at Clemson, which he moved from Clemson to downtown Greenville while he was dean, so that this pharmacy school could have been in Greenville in an instant. But it's a great thing in downtown Clinton. 340 students that are all renting apartments, and 30 or 40 faculty that are all making very, very high wages, since they're all PharmDs and that kind of thing. But the point I'm getting at here is that we have to be able to take charge of our own communities in a way that allows us to keep more of our own money locally. And one of the thoughts that I've had about that I've been developing over the last few years has been, I've been talking to people, for example, who retired early that didn't really want to. They just went on Social Security because another job wasn't out there, and at 62, age is not your friend anymore in terms of being redeployed to a new job. And so the thing that somebody who's on Social Security early and somebody who's disabled and somebody who is unemployed have in common is that they all have the ability to make some money. Okay, that I'm dealing professionally with a guy who's a preacher. He's blind. He used to be a butcher in a grocery store. He used to manage the meat department for Ingalls. He can earn some money, but he can't earn more than $700 a month, and so, or he loses his Social Security disability. Well, he is disabled. I mean, if you're blind, you're disabled. Come on. Right. I was talking to a guy who owned a karate shop. He was 26 years old when he had a heart attack. So he's got congenital heart failure. He's trying to run a small business, and he's limited that if he ever writes a check for more than $700 out of that account to himself, he'll lose his disability. And so what I'm saying is that I know that there need to be some rules about that, but what if you just bump that up by $200? What if you said that instead of being able to make $1,100 a month if you're on Social Security, you can make $1,400? What if you could make $1,000 a month instead of $700? Who would be hurt by that? I mean, you would be able to make more money. You would create value by the labor that you put into it. You would pay taxes on it, and you would put that money back into the economy. And so my point about that is that when you start looking at that demographic, that conservative ideas can apply to them as well. Let them keep more of their own money. And that then you come to the determination that people who are, when you make more money than that in Social Security, you don't lose your Social Security, you're just taxed at 50%. And all of us know people who work somewhere part-time, and when they hit that $1,180 a month, they walk out the door because they're not going to be taxed at 50%. Exactly. But what that tells you is that the 50% benchmark is a disincentive to work. And people stop doing whatever it is they do, whether it's building decks or putting tires on your car or waiting on you at Walmart. They quit doing it, and that we don't need people to quit doing things like that. And so we all need to be looking for ways that an economy can prosper, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up. We need to be doing both. I mean, that poor people are not going to hire you to do a high-wage job, okay? I mean, it's going to take somebody with capital to be able to do that. But that's not the only way that a small community can prosper. I mean, if everybody in Union County that was capable of working and does work could earn more money and keep more of it, the economy would have a flourish. My theory is that that's part of the prosperity of the 1990s, that when there was welfare reform that Clinton finally signed after vetoing it 3 times, that people did in fact get into the workforce, they did in fact produce goods and services, and the economy prospered during that period of time. There were other reasons, but I think that's one of them.
One of them, no doubt. You mentioned Presbyterian College. Now we have to remember too that that is a private college.
Right.
But going to the public side of things, and one of the hot-button issues in any political campaign is the word education.
Right.
Sacred cow, if you please. But you are well aware that we have USC Union here with a branch in Lawrence.
Right.
It's
USC Union at Lawrence.
USC Union at Lawrence. Wow, that's sort of a... But, hey, we like it. number one, well, I don't think we have an issue right now, but in past years, there have been some people that wanted to close this down.
And there still are. I mean, the people in the administration of USC and Columbia, have the Union branch and the Salkehatchie branch, on the top of their list, and that it is my assessment that those institutions provide valuable input and ways that people can get a college education and stay local. They have a big impact on the economy in terms of having the faculty and administration and the investment in their town. I have to say further that online education will provide people of Union County everywhere that have internet access the ability to get a college degree from a lot of places. So in terms of the ability to get educated, it's going to be there in the future in ways that it isn't even available now. It's going to be even more of that. But in terms of maintaining it, I think that being a member of the majority party down there puts me in a position to be a part of those discussions in a more forceful way than were I in the minority. And so that will be a priority for me every day to maintain that, because it has the same kind of impact that the pharmacy school has to Clinton, and it's just it's nothing but good.
Yeah. I want to get back to that, but I think we do have another, or do we have another caller? I thought we had another caller. Okay, somebody tell me something here. We'll figure it out in a minute.
Okay.
All right. Well, back to the university. Now, one of the things, and what really hit me there, I was not aware that they had that pharmacy school at PC.
Right. They're graduating their first class.
That is super. Well, whoever it was hung up. Wonderful. I want to see things added to USC Union. Now, when I say that, not as a radio host, but as a citizen that want to see things prosper. And I say that as a Clemson man, but I want to see USC prosper in many ways. And a couple of years ago, there was some talk of a nursing school being created here, which I'm sure Lawrence would also benefit from that. I don't know what happened to that, but I'd like to see that come back. And that would be more or less the same type situation of the pharmacy school at PC if we could get a nursing program here. What, just a reaction to that? I don't know.
Well, my first reaction to that is that when people leave a small community, Union, Joanna, Clinton, Jonesville, wherever, and they go off to school to get their nursing degrees and so forth, they stay there.
Yeah.
And that it leaves us at a personal deficit and at a skill deficit, meaning that we still need those skills here, and we still need those kinds of people here. We want those people to enrich our community, and that being able to get everything to accomplish an RN designation locally is a big deal. And so I would love to see them add that. I don't think that we're in danger of having too many nurses. I mean, I feel like that there's a deficit all over, but particularly in outlying areas. And I think that nurses are going to be a more important function in the total delivery of medical care in the future.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, especially as we see more and more involvement by the nurse practitioners.
Right.
And, hey, I see my nurse practitioner really more than I do my doctor, and
right.
I'm very happy with that.
Right.
As long as they keep me healthy, I'm good to go. All right, let's go back to economic development. Union. Union has its issues. Sometimes I think we contribute to those issues by our attitude. But when I really look at the numbers, Union has not really done that badly over the past 5, 6, 7 years. Had some figures to come in that we have added since 2009, I believe, don't hold me to it, 700 and some odd jobs. We've seen some expansion. We still have some expansions going on with our industry, and most of our growth, it seems to me, is coming from industry expansion. And this is what I was alluding to when I mentioned the governor a moment ago. As a legislator, let me just get real selfish with it. What are you going to do for Union County?
Well, it's interesting that you would pose it in that way. I think that going back to the question of how a community can keep more of its own money, that the communities themselves have to take responsibility for where they are, instead of saying that somebody's going to bless us with this expansion or this industry coming in. My experience with this has been that it matters who represents your community, and that our community has one very different tradition than Union, and that is professional management. And that our cities have been run by city managers, and we've had a county administrator as opposed to a supervisor, and that while those things are under new leadership now, and the community of Union needs to decide itself how it's going to govern itself. But I can tell you that when you put a city manager who's an MPA and got experience in the field in front of the people who are looking for economic development, that they respond positively to that professional engagement. Mm-hmm. And I can look at the curve in my local community and see when the biggest developments happened and who was representing us. And so having a vibrant professional local management is significant and important. And my own assessment is that local governments have gotten to be way too complex to be run by part-time people. And I don't mean that from a policy standpoint. I mean it from an administrative standpoint. The policy always needs to be made by people who are elected by the people. But the administration needs to be done professionally, and that there's a different tradition. And while I don't know, I mean, the state legislative delegation does have some impact on all of that, and I'm going to be reluctant to impose ideas like that on people who aren't interested in them, but I will advocate for them and talk about the benefits of it. And when I have a chance to put my finger on the scale, it'll be on the side of professional management, because I think the people of Union County haven't gotten their money's worth.
And that's interesting, because as you say, in Union, let's go with the county, we do not have a professional manager, but we do have, I think, a capable supervisor. Now.
Okay.
Now, and that's a very important thing. And all right, in the case of the city, we have a strong mayor now, and that is sort of interesting within itself, because twice we have had a professional management in Union, and twice the voters have gone to the poll and said, we don't want this.
Right.
But I think for reasons, I think it was more personality than it was professionalism. And that is something that's going to be very difficult to get past.
Well, I mean, that clearly when you bring in professional, you have to bring in professionals to fill the professional slot.
Right.
And, I can't tell you who you hired and what your experience has been with it. I can just tell you that our experience has been different. And that I think that's an important element to have professional management of that, and not being critical of the current leaders. I'm just saying that even if you have capable leaders, it's temporary. That they won't last forever, and you don't have a method of government that really gives people their money's worth. And I think we do.
And I think a lot of times, and I can understand that. When you do that, you feel like, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, that you personally are losing a little bit of control over what's going on. Right now, somebody can walk into the supervisor's office and bring an issue, raise Cain, if you believe, and feel like they're getting somewhere. They just don't feel that way with an administrator, because they didn't elect that person.
Well, you mean that they haven't in the past?
Right.
I mean, I don't think that you would get that response in Clinton.
Really?
I think that you would find that the city manager form of government is very well entrenched, and that in fact they feel like they're being treated professionally, as opposed to politically. I mean, that they're the people who are making the administration of the law are doing it fairly across the board, and don't have friends and relatives and real estate and other things at stake. And I have knowledge of other areas of the state, and know that there are all kinds of political games that get played in local government that have to do with zoning and real estate deals and all that kind of thing. And that my experience is that professional management is is better at that. And and that I realize that I have a particular bias, but it's a bias that's been developed over 30 years, and not one that's developed over one experience with one good city manager and versus one mayor who wasn't able to manage the city. So I mean, it's not an idea that is isolated in its origin.
Wow. I just wonder, and you mentioned a moment ago that Union, Lawrence County at 30,000 feet looked the same, and I guess you were speaking demographically there.
Right.
With that attitude and knowing a little bit about Clinton, Lawrence County, politically over the years, we have not been that different. And I just wonder how this attitude toward professional management came into being, and in Union we have had a very difficult time moving that direction.
Well, one of the things that is different about the structure of the towns is that the city of Clinton operates the utility system, water, sewer, electric.
As does Union.
The city operates those things, or CPW?
No, the City of Union Utility Department, yeah. Okay.
I was misinformed about that. That's interesting. And then we ran a natural gas business with the City of Newberry, which, has gotten to be a very large organization now. All out onto Lake Murray and Lake Greenwood and Whitmire and Innery and all kinds of areas all over the place. But I'm not sure that I can speak to the history of Union on Union radio about that. That's just not something that I know anything about in terms of that. But I'm just saying that our experiences have been different. We've put professionals in front of the people who have come in from Sterilite and the other companies, and that we've been able to perform complicated transactions like the pharmacy school, where the city bought the building that the pharmacy school was in and leased it back to them, and that the county came in and built the parking areas around. I was trying to get into the post office yesterday, and the 2 parking lots that were built for the pharmacy school had every single solitary slot taken. Wow. And it was inspiring, to think that you've got that many people in the center of your town. I mean, who wouldn't want to have 340 more people right here on Main Street in Union?
Exactly. And let me, in fairness to you, let me point out, as we talk about the matter of professional management, as a legislator, while you may be a proponent, you would have very little to do with making that happen.
Well, the interesting thing about going to the state office is that we're all creatures of state government. That everything is created by enabling legislation in the state. And that's how the school districts were rearranged, and that the 2 of them were closed, is that it went to the state and they changed the enabling legislation on it. And so that there is more to it than that. But I would be reluctant to impose any of that kind of stuff on the people of Union. That those kinds of things need to be done in the way I was describing earlier, by a change of heart and a change of mind, and where the consensus moves. And nobody who's a true conservative Republican is interested in imposing things on the the electorate at large. I mean, that's just not something that conservatives do.
No, it's indeed not. You don't. You're the first to publicly come out as a candidate for this. And previously, talking just before the show, you really don't know who your opponents may be.
No, that's true. That's true. And, to some degree, when you assert that you're going to be the best at it, you say, well, I don't care who comes, I mean, I could end up sort of like Peyton Manning did on Sunday and be pretty good on Saturday and not so good on Sunday. But, that all yet, has to be played out. I think that the qualifications and the qualities that I bring to the table are going to make my candidacy formidable. And I'll be reasonably well funded and active, and that part of announcing early, and of course this is the time to announce. I mean, that at some point if you don't really have it in your gut to go out there and do what has to be done, then it'll compromise your effectiveness as a candidate. So going at it early just tells you really want it, and you're really prepared for it, and you really want to go after it. But the other side of it, Mike, is that you have to do an equal amount of listening. You know, that I've got a political philosophy and I've got things that I want to do, but that in terms of going out there door to door and listening to what people say and what they are interested in is a big part of it. And you can't do that with media, and you can't do that because you're from a community, because you may think you know a lot of people, but you don't. Mm-hmm. And if you work with the public, like I do in the State Farm Office, people walk in every day. I mean, I've been mayor of the town. I've been on county council. I've run for the State House of Representatives, and there are people walk in every day that don't know me. So anybody who thinks that everybody in town knows them hasn't dealt with enough of the public. They don't know enough people to know how many they don't know.
Well, I understand that. And while we may know a lot of people, there are a lot of other people out there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't get away from the thought that a majority of District 42 is made up of Union County people.
Right.
That's good. And like I say, we don't know who's running, but we are only assuming that someone from Union County, irregardless Republican or Democrat in this case, but will run, and that could make it sort of difficult for you over here. You think?
It could make it difficult for a whole variety of reasons. I mean, people are going to decide who they're going to vote for based on some connection with them, whether it be where they're from or what political philosophy they have or where they went to school or whether they're Presbyterian or Baptist or, exactly, how they're going to make up that mind. And that I intend to go out and make a case to the people of Union County that I can represent them and that the issues are similar between the two towns and that I can effectively represent that voice in Columbia, and somebody else will have to do the same. But the race can be won. And they're won in a lot of places by minority candidates. It's just that, if you take your minority and dig into it and cocoon yourself in it, you probably won't win. But if you get yourself out there and go after the larger group and have a message that applies to everybody out there that they identify with, you can win this race.
Move to an issue here, and I'll be honest with you, this is one that's somewhat, well, not somewhat, but a lot personal to me. And in Union, in many of our government situations, specifically the school board, and more so, I mean, they are the worst violators of what I see as transparency. That is a word that we have heard. I have personally been in touch with Senator Peeler, who has said that he's going to be introducing some legislation, if he has, I haven't heard about it yet, to deal with some of this. In a personal conversation with Governor Haley, she assured me that she understood. And she also made an interesting comment. She said the problem with that type thing is greater in the smaller communities. And we could analyze that, I guess. But I go to these meetings and I see violations of the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
If not outright, at least very suspect. Governor Haley is dealing with introducing some revisions to the ethics laws. Where are you coming from? You've been on that other side as a mayor.
Right.
And you also know that it's real easy to think, well, there's probably some things that I wouldn't feel too comfortable discussing in public, but by the same token, the public needs to know. Give me your reaction.
Well, my entire public life has been after the Freedom of Information Act, and so there were a lot of things that went on immediately before my terms as mayor that didn't happen legally after that. But I have to tell you that this gets back to professional management, that professional city managers know what the law is, and they know that they can lose their career and not have advancement opportunities if they get on the wrong side of the law. And that in my term as a county council member, the county administrator was a former reporter. You know, he was very sensitive to those kinds of things.
Good for him.
Basically, if you have something to say that's private, say it between two people. Go to them personally and talk to them about it and about what the issues are. And there are things that are personally sensitive and unusual in the logic where they can be said between two individuals. That happens all the time. But in terms of conducting business and actually having the discussion that lays out who's on what side and making decisions and having votes, you just can't be doing that in private. That's not the way our government system works, and it shouldn't be done. And that the people who do it, there are laws in effect now that can deal with that. And that I think that to put too many teeth into it just makes it difficult to serve publicly. It's hard enough to get people to run for school board and that kind of thing without criminalizing a difference of opinion. But there are laws, and they need to be followed, and that it is an incredibly important body of law that has to do with that. And I haven't found myself so much at odds with it. I haven't found myself wishing that I could do everything by fiat and control and in the back room and have votes and convince people of things. I just haven't felt the necessity to do that. I don't stutter, and I speak in complete sentences, and I can say what I need to say in public.
The greatest abuse of any public body is executive session. That's my statement.
There it is.
And it's a very difficult thing to control, because once they're in executive session, you don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But it is horribly abused in Union County, and I will even go as far as to say the school board.
Right.
Is the worst offender. And that's also one of those things that's real easy to get yourself boxed in if you're not careful.
Well, and I don't know why they're going into executive session. I would not be amazed if they have a lot of different personnel issues. They've got a lot of employees, and they're interacting with a lot of people, and they may have issues like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but not every personnel issue needs to be in executive session. And the other thing that is often used is contractual matters.
Right.
Now, and it specifically says that the contractual matter is eligible for an executive session if a public discussion of that particular issue may compromise a contract. We see that mostly in situations of negotiating for a business or a plant to come into our area.
Right.
Those things can get messy if everybody knows it beforehand, and you know that.
Right.
And I know that.
I do know that.
That is abuse. We're out of time.
Are we out of time?
Man, I've enjoyed this too much.
Well, thanks.
Really have.
I enjoy being with you.
Well, thank you, David. David Tribble, he is a candidate announced as of today as a Republican county candidate for South Carolina House District 42. That is the seat that is currently held by Mike Anthony.
He's been keeping it warm for me.
Yeah, he probably has.
I know Mike. We served together in the house.
Good guy.
Yeah.
Everybody in the union loves him. Which, by the way, because you love him, does not necessarily make him qualified for a job. I'm sure a lot of people love you, but they don't know if they would qualify for you as a job. Be careful how you evaluate things.
I think people will vote for me because they know I'll be good for the job, even if they don't love me.
That's a better
you actually don't agree all the time with anybody, including yourself.
Well, that's probably true. That is probably true. Our best to you. Stay in touch with us, and it's going to be this race particularly is going to be interesting as it develops, and we see who may be offering for this job too. So stay in touch with us.
Thanks, Mike.